President Donald Trump's administration tried to do an end run around the Constitution in Washington, D.C. And a federal judge, however, basically said,
No.
absolutely not. So now this case is about one simple question. Can the federal government give immigration agents the power to just snatch people up off the streets in D.C. without a warrant? Just because they might suspect that they're undocumented? Well, Judge Beryl Howell's answer is no. No, and her reasoning, of course, should scare the hell out of anyone who believes that, well, I'm a citizen, so I'm not going to be affected, right? Of course not. Now, the issue is, of course, is that it actually is about you. Okay, so here's what went down. Here's the details. So Congress passed a law giving Donald Trump's Department of Homeland Security authority to deputize certain local or federal officers to make civil immigration arrests without a warrant. Just because, well, you know, we might think that this person is removable. That relies, of course, on racial profiling. Now, the other thing is immigration violations are mostly civil matters. They're not criminal, okay? And that's already a pretty big deal, right? Because we're not talking about catching somebody in the act of committing a violent crime. We're talking about grabbing someone off the street because they don't have the correct paperwork. Okay. Now, in D.C., of course, that collided with local protections and constitutional rights, like due process, for example. So immigrants' rights groups and residents pushed back, and in the case, ended up landing in front of Judge Beryl Howell. And she didn't just quietly tap the brakes. She slammed them. Okay. She ruled that in the District of Columbia, the feds can't just hand out this power and turn officers into roaming immigration snatch squads doing warrantless civil arrests. That power was never clearly authorized and clashes with the legal framework that governs D.C. So the translation here is that you don't get to invent a little mini police state for immigrants inside the nation's capital. That is not what you can do. Now, if you're a MAGA chud, this is where you'll say, well, if they're illegal, what's the problem? Arrest them. Get rid of them. Well, this is why civics should be mandatory. The question in this case is not, hey, do you like the immigrants? The question is, do you want federal agents to have the power to detain people without a warrant based on the suspicion of a civil violation? Again, not criminal, civil. Now, if the answer is yes, well, congratulations. You just endorsed a principle that can be used on anyone, even you. Because the government never builds tools like this and then says, oh, don't worry about it. We're not going to use it against you. We're going to only use it on the brown people that we told you to be afraid of. That's not how it works. It's not how any of this works, okay? No, power tends to expand. Power creeps. And if they can normalize warrantless civil arrests for immigrants today, what stops them from being able to push that same logic onto protesters tomorrow, or journalists, or political opponents? And you know, if you're one that says, oh, good, well, then you must be an authoritarian, okay? And here's the thing. All those groups, by the way, show up in Project 2025's little purge, okay? So, yes, that is exactly who they want to go after. That said, Judge Howell said, look, Congress never clearly gave DHS the authority to override these protections in D.C. And so you don't get to stretch vague language into a blank check to do warrantless arrests. Understand that this is classic conservative overreach. They lose in the court of public opinion. You can check the polls. The majority of Americans are against what ICE is doing right now. So what they're doing is they're trying to quietly rewrite the rules of enforcement. Howell's ruling is a reminder that there is still a branch of government that occasionally stands up and is able to say, hey, you can't do this. Read the Constitution. So now she also underscored something basic in her ruling. Even in immigration enforcement, you still have to follow the legal process or due process. You don't get to bypass the Fourth Amendment because Fox News ran a scary story about illegals. Okay. Now, here's the thing. When you cheer on state power against them, you end up volunteering yourself for the next round. Look, MAGA has been screaming for years that, well, we just need to let ICE do its job. Follow the laws. Well, who cares if they have a warrant? Deport them anyway. Well, that's not exactly following the laws now, is it? But here's the thing. They've laid the groundwork for a government, maybe not even led by Trump, in the future that can use the same unchecked power to do whatever it wants. I mean, this ends up having impacts for a very long time. And people tend to think that authoritarianism shows up wearing like a swastika and screaming in German. Sorry to my German viewers here. But most of the time, it actually shows up in a legal memo and a public safety talking point. Now, thankfully, in this case, it's one of those moments where a judge said, we're not doing that. Now, there's another layer here to this as well, and that's D.C. itself, which is not a state. Now, residents of Washington, D.C. have actually no voting representation in Congress, even though that's where Congress is located. But they end up being able to be the test lab for federal power grabs. That's not good. So they can't vote on the people making the rules, but they're supposed to just live with it, right? With warrantless immigration arrests on the streets. It's pretty messed up when you think about it. It's also technically taxation without representation and policing without accountability. Remember, a lot of the communities targeted by these arrests are black and brown, immigrant, working class, same people who already deal with over-policing every single day. Judge Howell's ruling doesn't magically fix any of those problems, but it does happen to put a legal tripwire in front of one of the Trump team's favorite games. Hey, let's see how far we can push the envelope, guys. Now, that said, I know my audience, you are not blind partisans. So let's be honest and do a little criticism. The Democrats, they have talked a lot about, the guardrails of democracy, while also voting for massive DHS funding and let ICE grow into a domestic surveillance monster and look the other way when tough on the border politics are convenient. So this is not a situation where, oh, the blue team saved us. This is one federal judge in a single case, stopping one particularly egregious power grab for the moment. If you do want to stop this stuff long term, you don't need just good rulings from a court. You need to roll back that infrastructure of the surveillance state, the laws, the budgets, the secret agreements that let these agencies operate in the shadows with impunity. Because the Trump movement and whatever comes after it is actually counting on that machinery being in place when and if they take power again. So now, what is the big takeaway from all this? Well, warrantless civil immigration arrests in D.C. hit a legal wall, and that's a good thing. But remember, this is not just about immigrants. It's about whether the government has to prove anything before it grabs, imprisons, or deports a human being. That's important. And authoritarians always test the edges on the most vulnerable people first. And if we let it slide there, well, guess what? It eventually lands on everyone else. When someone shows you that they are willing to shred civil liberties for political gains, well, you should believe them. And when they tell you, we're going to unleash law enforcement, you should probably also believe them. And when they design policies that treat entire communities as presumptively suspicious, as we have seen in many instances here, just the latest, the Latino community, but even going back to the Muslim community after 9/11. Believe them. Judge Howell, she believed them. And that's why she shut this down. If this video helped you cut through the BS and see what is really happening, then smash that like button. Every single like pushes back against the right-wing propaganda machine. I can't do this work without your support. So please check out my Patreon. Link is in the description of this video. For a few bucks a month, you can help keep this channel independent from corporate BS. So hit subscribe, hit that notification bell, and let's keep fighting for democracy and against fascism together.